Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to San Francisco Independent Short Film Festival. I'm Kate from Festival Formula, and today we'll be speaking to some of the filmmakers featured in the art, dance, and music program. Matthew,
Hi,
is it
can you hear me?
okay? Yeah, I can hear you. Is everything okay there?
Yeah, it's really weird what's happening to us.
Okay. Is it okay if you could mute your video? Just
All right.
it's quite just so I can hear everyone talk. Okay, so I'm going to start with an icebreaker question. Using one word, how would you like an audience to feel after your film? So I'm going to pick on Alejandra to begin with. Oh, you need to unmute yourself as well.
Moved.
What was that? Sorry?
Moved,
Moved.
like yes, moved. Okay, well, let me pick another one. Love.
Love. That's a good word. That's how I felt when I watched it. JD, how about you? One word for an audience to feel after watching your film.
Amused.
Amused. Alessio?
Energized.
Yes, definitely. Ben, how about you?
I would say reflective.
Reflective. Matt?
I'd say disturbed, I think.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking to the other Matt. Matt, what was that?
Awake.
Awake. Matthew?
I would say disturbed.
Disturbed. Okay. And Lindsay, one word?
Alessio stole my word. I would also say
I'm
energized.
sorry.
Energized. Yes.
Other word might be nostalgic.
Nostalgic. Okay. Shirin?
I would say curious.
Curious. Okay. Lovely. Okay. So now we've got the icebreaker question done. I'm going to go big. What is the inspiration behind your film? And I'm going to pick Matthew down for last call.
Hi. I think I wanted to talk about differences between people and the way you consider other people, and you cannot always imagine the way people are considering you, and trying to put yourself in the skin of someone else. So I try to tell a story about that.
Okay, interesting. And Lindsay, what was the inspiration behind your film?
So Shireen and I were actually part of the Union Docs collab here in Brooklyn, New York. And the theme for our collab was kind of around the L train that was going to be shutting down in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
But then we kind of ended up kind of transitioning to be transportation in general. And so for me, I was new to moving to the city and living somewhere where I had honestly never really had public transportation that properly worked. And I was just so in awe of just kind of the daily rhythms and routines that people have. It was just very new to me and just really fascinating. And so that's kind of where the initial kind of inspiration started, was just kind of finding these everyday funny habits and tricks and routines that people had to kind of just like move about their day very, very quickly and just hopefully pleasantly.
What about you, Shirin? Do you feel the same?
Yes, and I definitely feel nostalgic is a good word for those times when we, I used to a little bit loathe, but also love the subway. And I think that comes across in this film because you see people who have different kinds of challenges in their day-to-day transportation habits. But now more than ever, I miss the routine and rhythms and the energy of being around a bunch of strangers on a crammed, metal tube every day. So
yeah, definitely. I like the bit in the film where you keep showing the person with the ticket that keeps trying to get through, because every time I go to New York, that's me. So I'm really glad that's not just me.
Definitely not.
Ben, what is the inspiration behind your film?
So our film started just with a curiosity. We had some artistic collaborators who were all just really excited to work together. And so we started talking about what really moved us to create some art. And what we found is that we all had these stories of conflict in our past that were very different, but very formative. And so one of the beauties of dance as an artistic medium is that it's abstract enough that you can connect people through their emotional similarities without the specifics of their circumstances being a part of the picture. And so what we sought out to do was create a dance film that allowed all of us to represent these different conflicts that we found in our lives through our own experience. And so it was a shared experience.
Lovely. Cool. Sorry. Alessio, what is the inspiration behind Mamba Negra?
So it's been a series of circumstances that came together to, create this movie. First of all, it's a trip that a friend of mine, who is the producer, took to Brazil a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And through a series of conversations and also many common interests, like street art and art that is made in the street and art as social protest, we began developing the concept not only for Mamba Negra, but for a series of short documentaries that, some other of them are now in development and in post-production, that have this common theme. This, unfortunately, was happening at the same time of, the extreme right gaining power in Brazil and in many other places in the world. And especially these groups of peoples, these subcultures that were already marginalized and, silenced somehow, they have a very strong social and political discourse. And we try to, capture their essence through these, small videos. I hope we managed to.
It's a fantastic show. I really wanted to go to that party.
Oh, you should. Yeah. As soon as they're gonna start again, I'll let you know.
as soon as we can start flying again, that's the first place I'm going.
Yeah, cool.
JD, what was the inspiration behind your film?
Well, I made my movie during the shelter in place here in San Francisco, and it really just started to amuse my friends. I made the little t-shirt music video just to show them this epic t-shirt buying binge I went on for I don't know why. And one of my friends said, you gotta do more with that. You should put that into context of either a documentary or like, why are you buying all these t-shirts? And I didn't really want to do that. So I just sort of penned a little story about what I thought people were going through with the shelter in place and how just trying to have sort of like a small level of control in their lives, when in reality that at this point we really don't have control. We're getting it back a little bit now.
That's really interesting. I loved the colors of, I was like strangely relaxed by how coordinated the t-shirt wardrobe was.
Well, I'm glad you were.
Very colorful. Hello, Sarah. Nice of you.
Hello. Sorry, super late.
No, don't worry. It's absolutely fine. Alejandra, what is the inspiration behind your film?
And my film, Hermades Dora, is a little bit of a personal experience, actually. But at the same time, obviously, there is fiction in it. And it's about this conflict difficult relationship between mother and daughter. I love my mother, but sometimes we clash. And so it's this conflict, this constant conflict between this very vulnerable, yet a strong woman. So I wanted to bring that out in a dance form. I come from a dance background, a theater background. So I kind of like Ben and his film, when you do things through dance and through movement, you pick up whatever you want to pick, and you know, as an audience, as a viewer. And I felt like through movement and dance, it was the best way to express some of the conflict without being too literal. So yeah, so basically it's a part personal experience, but I think it's a very universal theme, because people that I talk to, people I talk to is like, oh yes, that's how I feel with my mother. Oh yeah, my wife actually, she has this issue with her mother, and so I think it's very universal.
Definitely. And Matt, for Asanasa, what was the inspiration behind your film?
Well, thanks for the invitation first, for being here, and hi to everybody. I enjoyed looking at your work. There's sort of two angles to the inspiration. One is having taught digital media production for 20 years, I've got very jaded about what I think of as the digital dogma, you know, the Adobe org, and I've really appreciated in the last 8 to 10 years working with film and getting into the analog sort of materiality of actually working physically with film, and doing things like handwriting and weaving with film, and then experimenting with a really sort of open process to see what then happens when it's projected. Layered into that is, I guess, a loose narrative about rocketry, about space exploration, as what I see as a kind of patriarchal, masculinist, kind of neo-colonialist dick measuring contest, and that's the basic theme that I was exploring.
Okay, very cool. I'm a huge fan of using old film footage.
Great.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And Sarah, what was the inspiration behind Dive?
Well, it's an official video clip, so for sure the music, the music intertext was a starting point, and I got asked to pick a track from an album that was about to be released, and listening to them. So I do quite a lot of video clips and visuals. So the way I approach music is visual. I always say that I see music rather than properly listening to it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so usually I know immediately if I can work on a piece or not, because if I don't get the right stimuli, I'm not visionary enough to do to work on it. And visionary, yeah, it's because I work with underground musicians mostly, and so also very few collaborators, no big crews. We're all really indie, but I don't know, some of you maybe had more like a proper crew that I had when I'm doing short fiction. But this one was really a little experiment that I edited during the lockdown. So back to the lockdown, we were all editing stuff, I believe, during those days stuck at home. And but it was a strange moment for me, because I came back to actually the Venice, the place where I grew up, after a couple of years in Asia, where I was teaching. The right timing to be back, probably. And my life there was quite hectic, so I didn't really have time to process it, to go, I don't know, through that and think about what I was doing over there. It's obviously also a cultural clash, so many things going on there. So the lockdown for me was even before the video, but just, you know, a little bit of me time back and thinking about your own experience, your own journey. And the closest thing was this big Asia experience. So I didn't have a proper camera there. It was very busy, but I had a lot of snippets filmed with my iPhone. So the piece is actually done out of these snippets that I was filming with my iPhone in different parts of Asia.
Oh, wow.
Mostly Singapore and Hong Kong. This is the two places where I was the most. And then some Australia, because I was in Australia. From there is very nearby. And I kind of came up with this idea of intertwining this footage with some VHS footage that I have from a bunch of years ago, where I was experimenting with VHS for visuals mostly. And so there's this little bit of playing with this iPhone phone, really the smartphone shot in Asia, and these memories that are in VHS, where I was trying to intertwine my very recent experience in Asia and my roots here in Europe, and in particular the Mediterranean area.
Yeah.
And so the whole play is around this thing of the word dolphin, which in Greek, because we all studied Greek here in high school, something like that. The etymology of the word in Greek is very similar to womb. And so there's this kind of overlapping meaning that we know over here. So that was really my trigger. And so you see basically a lot of diving and dolphins together, and a tummy of a woman, but it's all very, very layered, so not recognizable anymore, I think, in the final output.
Like taking something very modern and futuristic like the iPhone and putting the past
The VHS memory, yes.
Laying it. Oh, very cool. So next question, and I'm going to pose this to Alessio. What was the hardest obstacle whilst making your film?
Wow, that's an interesting question. It's okay. So the access was not very difficult because both me and the producer have always frequented this kind of parties. So it was easy to gain access and to talk to the founders and the producers of the party and the musicians. I think that the biggest challenge was probably to manage to shoot as much as possible in the shortest time possible and with a very small crew. And also to try to do not interfere with their creative process. We always try to stay as much in the background as possible, but sometimes it was difficult because we were literally, invading the artistic space, like even their houses where they, do all the rehearsals for the parties. And so I think to blend in without being intrusive and, without crossing the boundaries of, invading a sacred space, because, for them, that's their sacred space where they create and they express themselves to the fullest.
Yes.
And the rest, I think it was easy. I wish I could have shot more, but the resources, the economical resources, didn't allow us to.
How long did you shoot? How many days did you shoot for?
Just like 5-6 days maximum, and like spread out over a couple of months because they don't do parties every day, so and they don't rehearse every day, so we had to arrange to their schedule mostly.
Okay.
And that's it. The rest was just, for me, it was my first experience as a director of documentaries and also as an editor. So it was, I learned a lot.
Yes.
I learned a lot, really, and by doing it, which is, you know, the best.
Well, for a
But,
first time directing, that's a good short film to start with.
Thank you.
And
Thanks.
Ben, what was the biggest obstacle for you making your film?
The process for us actually was, there weren't many real obstacles in the way. I think one of the joys of creating Avoidance was that all of the artists who were engaged in the process really just wanted to explore what we could creatively pull together. And so in that, there weren't too many obstacles to overcome because we were all very much on the same vibe, trying to figure out what was possible. I would say the biggest challenge within the process was balancing kind of the plan that we laid out when we thought we had our vision of where it was going to go, and then discovering these new creative opportunities and trying to balance how much do we adhere to what our prescribed plan was versus explore these new ideas. We only had one day to film everything on location, and so it was a very quick build up the whole set, film the dance a few times, and kind of get some special shots in there, and then tear it all down. So it was pretty time constrained, but I do think that actually what emerged from it when we did follow those creative whims, the film did end up a little bit different than how we originally intended, but I think it allowed a little bit more, the spontaneity, I think, let the performance feel more genuine and sincere. And so we felt really good about how that did end up balancing out for us.
And such an emotive performances to come from the dancers.
They were fantastic.
They were. I was very, very moved by the whole thing. It was beautiful. JD, what was the biggest obstacle? Was it choosing the t-shirts?
No, that was the easy and fun part. Well, time-consuming part, but no, the hardest part was writing the story around the t-shirts, because I did the t-shirts first for, like I said, for fun, just to amuse myself and my friends, and then the challenge was, well, can you write anything to go with it? And it took me about 6 or 7 different stories before I finally just came up with the one that just kind of popped into my head one day while showering. But I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and never was happy with, because typically when I write, I just write whatever I want, let it go where it will, and then edit it down. But in this case, I had that 2-minute t-shirt video that I had to get to. So I had to figure out a way to get there, that felt satisfying to me.
Okay, very cool. Lindsay and Shirin, I can only imagine what the obstacles were for filming your film, but is there a specific one that stands out?
Shirin, maybe you have a different idea, but I think the biggest challenge for us was honestly in post-production, doing sound design. We really wanted to, well, first of all, each character in the film, they have their own soundtrack. So I think finding ways to like weave that music in and out that like felt natural and a little bit seamless. But then more than that, it was also really important for us to include sounds of the subway into the music track, and figuring out how to do that. Because also sounds of the subway are terrible. Like they don't sound
very cool.
Well, thank you. But yeah, finding a way to like make the subway sounds something that like felt rhythmic and something that went along kind of with the soundtrack and didn't sound terrible was challenging.
It sounded great in the end. What about you, Shirin? Was there anything else that stood out?
Yeah, so I was more involved in finding the characters we wanted to have in the film, and I think it was both like there were almost too many options when it's like, who do we have to represent the subway experience? And so it wasn't so much a challenge, but for me, a really interesting and enlightening process to reach out to groups whose experience on the subway were very different than my own. Like a disability rights activism group connected us with one of the characters in the film who uses a wheelchair, and it's a very, very uniquely challenging experience to deal with a subway delay or a subway elevator not working when you're disabled versus when you're able-bodied. And so I think that part of it for me it was a delightful challenge to try to find others whose experiences were very different than mine to be in this film.
Excellent. Matthew, from Last Call, what was the biggest obstacle for your film?
Well, I guess it was time and money, I think.
Yeah, it's always time and money.
Yeah, well, we shot a 19-minute film in 2 days. I surely would have needed another day at least. The hardest part for me was to cut a lot of things on set. On my script, I was just cutting things straight away because I knew I wouldn't get to the end of the second day with all I wanted. So I had to keep in mind I'm an editor, so I knew what would work without some stuff, but I wanted more reactions from the public in the story, and that I had to cut, and I think it misses a little bit in the final film, but still I still wanted to have this whole process of the storytelling, so I got that, and it's like a dance, like a trance, like a waltz, and so I got that, so finally it's pretty good. The other part was always keeping in mind that I did this project because I really wanted to tell that story, but it's also the next story I want to tell. I had an experience 20 years ago with my first short film when we had the award of the best experimental film in New York. And then my producer told me, yeah, well, you can come with another story now. And I proposed a lot of stuff to him, and he told me, well, that has nothing to do with what you proposed. That's in the first short film. And I was 23 years old at the time, and I said, is that short film is going to show the way for everything I make from now? And I said, no, that's not possible. So that's why it took me 20 years to do this second film. Now I know what's coming next.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Awesome. Alejandra, what was the biggest obstacle for your film?
In reality, there were not really that many obstacles. I was very lucky to find the people that wanted to be there and cast. But I will say that it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult to actually cast the mother and daughter because, I mean, you have to look for two people that look similar, you know, that they're related. For me, in addition to that, then I had to find somebody that could dance and then could act. And then I wanted them to be different too, you know, not just like these beautiful, typical bailarinas. I said I wanted to find these two women that are real and organic and earthy. So I was it took me a while to find it, but then once I did, I felt that it was perfect because I intentionally casted a 70-year-old lady because otherwise people don't cast this kind of woman. And I figured this is my opportunity to give opportunity to women that wanna be there, that are beautiful and that they wanna express themselves. I also casted the daughter because I mean she's a dancer and maybe not very good. Well, she doesn't have any acting training per se, but I really believe in her because she was really, really excited. And especially I cast her because, and I don't know if you noticed, if you have seen the film, and it wasn't part of the story, and I didn't want to be part of the story, that she has a disability. She has a prosthetic leg.
Yes.
And that was another reason why I cast her, because I say, you know, like these people, these beautiful women that have so much strength and so much beauty, and they need to be out there, and I wanted to give them that opportunity. So it took me a while, but eventually once I found them, I thought I was like, this is it. This is amazing. And then, you know, same thing, time. I shot it in 3 days, and then you know, like the script, I wrote the script, so my ending when I wrote the script was completely different to what you actually see. And because once I started editing, I figured I don't think this ending works, even though I shot it and everything. So I had to change it at the last minute. So, you know, just those little decisions that you had to make as you go through the whole process. So it wasn't really challenges, but it was more about, well, yeah, challenges of decision making. What are you going to include? What are you going to take out? And then, you know, and crossing fingers that hopefully people get the message. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think casting two women who are beautiful, of course, but they're relatable beauty, and it adds to sort of universal message of the story, you know, a mother and daughter relationship.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Definitely. Matt from Asanasa, what was the biggest obstacle for you?
Excuse me. In a former life, I was a graphic designer and art director, and that was my sort of introduction to sort of creative process, if you like, and it was very instrumentalized. You know, it's be wacky, be crazy, take flights of fancy, but the deadline is the deadline, and you've got to deliver something coherent. So I've been trying to work against that, and with this particular film, which I'd call a process film, it's very oriented around just feeling my way, of doing some layering, some remediation, so maybe a little bit like Sarah's work, perhaps, and trying to resist closure. You know, just to sit with the material. I mean, it was sort of a 2-year process for what's a very short film, but then of course the other side of that is, you know, when is it finished and what is it I'm trying to say? So there's some tensions in there in terms of the process, like trying not to reach closure, trying to allow the material to breathe, but also wanting to have it cohere.
Excellent, very cool. Sarah, we have to finish, unfortunately, quite quickly, but I just wanted to ask you, what was your biggest obstacle with your, oh, you're muted, Sarah.
Yeah, because my connection is very bad. Sorry, so I hope I can be quick.
But I'm going to ask you your biggest obstacle with making Dive.
Well, I actually was escaping different obstacles because in the meantime I was editing a fiction short where I had mostly all the problems that you were mentioning, and I'm still working on it, so it's not done. So actually I didn't have many obstacles. When I do video clips, it's usually to compensate other works and visuals and video clips, exactly because I have more freedom in the sense of the narrative, just exactly what Matt was referring about. It's not really, you know, it's not really scripted. I have some imaginary, but it's not scripted. It's not scenes. You don't have a crew. So it was definitely a relief those days of Stockholm, and I had the material that it is, and I had any problem, especially.
Ooh, your connection's a bit bad.
Little short I'm working on, so having just you know, a track, just having to play around, that was just smooth, I would say.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
so nice.
Yeah, good. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but